Every drop of blood feels the freezing paralysis of fear, almost stopping your heart, as Edgar Allan Poe unfolds his tales of terror.
You will meet the master of the mansion, who loved and protected his wife with the strength of a supernatural love, even beyond life itself.
Then you'll enjoy the Black Cat's sardonically humorous tale. It all started at the Vintners Convention, where the lover of wine met the professional wine taster and introduced him to his wife, a darling who delighted in dalliance.
In this monstrous mausoleum of the living, you will witness fury far worse than a woman scorned. The fury of a dead woman's jealousy.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I've brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that hurts!
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Hey there, you found the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
Join us today as we look at not one, not two, but three Tales of Terror from 1962.
Tales of Terror was directed by Roger Corman from a screenplay by Richard Matheson and was produced by Roger Corman for Alta Vista Productions and released by American International Pictures.
The first tale of terror is Morella, and it stars Vincent Price as Locke, Maggie Pierce as Lenora Locke, Leona Gage as Morella Locke, and Ed Cobb as coach driver.
The second tale of terror is The Black Cat, featuring Vincent Price as Fortunato Lucrezi, Peter Lorre as Montresor Herringbone, Joyce Jameson as Annabel Herringbone, Lenny Weinrib as policeman, Wally Campo as Barman Wilkins, Joan Hackett as policeman, and Alan DeWitt as Wine Society chairman.
And our final tale of terror is The Case of M. Valdemar, starring Vincent Price as Ernest Valdemar, Basil Rathbone as Mr. Carmichael, Debra Paget as Helene Valdemar, David Frankaham as Dr. Elliot James, and Scott Brown as the servant.
Tales of Terror opens with the familiar voice of Vincent Price as our narrator, saying, "This is the beat of a human heart. Sit very still and listen. Is your heart beating in this same rhythm? You are experiencing the heartbeat of a dying man, and it is with death and dying that we concern ourselves. What happens at the point of death? What happens afterwards? What happens after death to someone who does not choose to stay dead? Someone like Morella?"
And we begin the first tale, Morella. A youngish woman is riding in a carriage through a foggy, wooded area. The carriage driver arrives at a large manor house, and the woman goes to the front door. As she knocks, the carriage driver deposits her trunk on the doorstep. He can't stay, so she tells him to leave the case for her father's servants to bring in.
She knocks again, and still no one answers. So she opens the door and enters. The place is dusty and full of cobwebs. She hears a sound from upstairs and calls out, "Is anyone there? Father? Father?" There's no response, so she continues and ventures into the dining area. The table is set and glasses are full, but everything is covered in spiderwebs. She screams as she sees a large spider crawl over a glass of wine.
The tarantula. I think if you get tarantulas, you have a bigger problem than just neglect. She goes upstairs and looks around the deserted and disheveled hallway. She goes into a room where she sees a portrait of a dark-haired woman on the wall. From behind her, a voice barks, "Who are you?"
She turns and sees Vincent Price as Locke, staring at her and taking a drink. She says, "Father?" "What?" he replies. "It's Lenora, Father. You are my father." "Yes," he says. "What do you want here?" And she is silent. "Shocked?" he asks, disgusted. She says no and asks if he's there all alone. He says that he was, until she came.
He pours himself another drink and leaves the room. Lenora follows him. She asks if this cold shoulder is all he has to offer her after 26 years of separation. That's apart from the 21 years of boarding school fees.
She says that she had hoped that they could get to know each other before she leaves his life entirely, and she has no way to get back to Boston tonight, so she asks if she can stay. "Do as you wish," he replies. Then he goes back upstairs to that painting of the dark-haired woman that Lenora had been looking at earlier, and he speaks to it. "Morella, my beloved wife," he says, "your murderer has returned."
Dun dun dun. Later, Lenora looks for her father in his rooms, but instead stumbles upon the mummified body of her dead mother, which has been moldering in a canopied bed all these years. She screams and her father appears, growling, "Don't touch her."
Lenora asks if she's been lying here all these years. Why did you come here, says Locke, grabbing her arm. Don't touch me, screams Lenora. I'm not a helpless baby this time. I'll go when I... Unable to finish the sentence, she runs from the room in tears. Why did I come here, she sobs. Locke asks her to try and understand. She says she does, but Locke says, no, you understand nothing. When she died, Locke died with her, he says. She was his life.
Now he's a shell of a man, a ghost of flesh. Lenora says, and I killed her. And her father says, she thought so. She said so on her deathbed. She couldn't accept dying a few months after giving birth to you. How I hated you, confesses her father, who describes how he took her from her cradle and contemplated throwing her off a high balcony.
I wish you had, spits Lenora. This breaks Locke's spell. What, he asks, reaching for her, but Lenora pulls away and starts to cry.
She tearfully grabs a glass of whiskey and sips it between coughs.
You're ill, says Locke. She tells him that she has only a few months to live. Locke says he's sorry, and she continues. In my 26th year, my father is finally concerned about me. Has he ever asked just once in the last 26 years where his daughter is? How is she doing? And Locke begs for forgiveness.
She pulls away, saying that she'll leave soon, but Locke pulls her back, and she agrees to stay. Later, they're dining in the kitchen.
Lenora must have been tidying up because the dust and cobwebs are all gone, and I'm sure Locke didn't do it.
And there's no one else who could have. She's describing her failed marriage and other relationships. This is obviously someone with daddy issues. Lenora asks how her mother died, and her father tells her that her mother insisted on having a party, but after it started, she collapsed. She blamed the baby and swore to avenge herself on her child. And then before the doctor arrived, she was dead.
Locke was so distraught that he wanted to kill himself. He couldn't bear the thought of hiding Morella's beauty away, so a burial was out of the question. And now, asks Lenora? Well, now there's no reason not to do it, he says. And he asks if she will stay. Do you really want me to? Lenora asks. Yes, says Locke, you've come home at last.
Then we hear Morella's voice coming from her mummified body, whispering, at last.
And she looks a little less mummified now.
Yeah, she's rejuvenating. That night, Morella's spirit exits her corpse and drifts over to where Lenora is sleeping and enters her body.
Lenora awakens with a scream, and her scream alerts Locke, who runs to her room. Lenora is gasping for breath. Lenora, what's wrong? What can I do? She continues struggling, then stops. Locke weeps in grief for a moment, then gathers himself. How I envy you. Sleep, you are released. He goes over to the mirror, then hears a sound of breathing from the bed. He turns to find Lenora again struggling for air. He rushes to her side.
She gasps once, and then resumes being dead. Locke covers up her body, leaving it on the bed. He sits in front of her fireplace. Then there's a moaning from under the sheet. Locke goes to look for his daughter, but instead finds the lively and well-dressed body of Morella. Shocked, Locke runs to Morella's deathbed, where lies the putrefying corpse of Lenora.
Then Morella comes into the room. Locke turns around and, upon seeing her, drops the candle he was holding. The candle ignites the drapes on the canopy bed. Morella approaches him and says, all these years I've waited to return. All these years I've waited to avenge myself. As the room is engulfed in flames, Morella strangles Locke.
The last shot is of a body lying over his. It is the now youthful face of Lenora, smiling in death.
And a title card concludes the tale of Morella, saying, the winds of the firmament breathed but one sound within my ears, and the ripples upon the sea murmured evermore.
Morella. Edgar Allan Poe.
Then narrator Vincent Price continues. And what is it that happens just before death, which leads inexorably to that death? Our second tale provides one roguish answer to that question in the story of a man who hated a cat. The Black Cat.
Now we see Peter Lorre as Montresor Herringbone waddling drunkenly home, followed by a black cat who watches from a second-story ledge. Montresor goes into his house and crashes out on the table, pushing all the fruit off of it.
He picks up a candle and throws that to the ground as well. Montresor? A voice calls from upstairs. Come down here, he calls back. A black cat comes downstairs and jumps on the table next to him. Keep that beast away from me or I'll kick his head in. Annabel, Montresor's wife, comes downstairs and retrieves the cat from the table.
Annabel struggles to put the things back on the table. Montresor swats the cats and the fruit away again.
Montresor asks her for some money, but Annabel says there is none. He accuses her of having a stash around here someplace. The cat jumps on the table again, and Montresor pushes it off the table, and he again asks for money. And Annabel again insists that there is none. So Montresor starts looking around. If you're not going to give me the money, I'll have to find it myself.
He loots their home, opening and dropping every conceivable hiding place for money, including a vase which he throws at the black cat. And then he collapses. When he wakes in bed, the cat is purring on his chest. He angrily removes it, and then hallucinates a rattlesnake.
He shakes off that hallucination as Annabel comes in. Give me my money, he tells her, and once again she tells him that there is none. He hasn't worked in 17 years. Has it been that long, he asks. Then he says that he knows that she has some money. She gets it for her sewing. We need that for food, she says. Montresor says that's exactly what he wants it for. He drinks his food.
So she pulls some coins from her bosom and turns them over. He happily thanks her for looking into her heart to find the money, and then he goes. Annabel says, he was so romantic once.
And now we're at the Red Lion Tavern, which is Montresor's pub of choice. But right now, Montresor is being thrown out. He sits on the ground complaining that Annabel didn't give him enough money.
After all he's done for her.
He stands and stumbles towards passers-by, begging for money, saying he's a veteran or a moral cripple or a dying man. But he's unsuccessful in getting more money. He continues walking and notices a sign for a wine merchants convention. He looks through the window. It seems like he's found his people.
Well, he's found some wine at least. He totters in. Inside, the assembled gentlemen stop and stare at the drunken newcomer. Montresor continues and finds a bottle to admire. Then one of the merchants announces the program is beginning. Introducing Fortunato Lucrezi, the most preeminent wine taster in the world. Fortunato turns around and we see that this is Vincent Price.
He can recognize any wine and its vintage simply by taste. Nonsense, spits Montresor. I can do that too. He's about to be thrown out, but Fortunato decides to entertain the gentleman and challenges him to a taste-off. Montresor is up to the challenge. Bring on the wine, he says.
Fortunato has a very precise and pretentious tasting style, but it works. He guesses the wine correctly. On the other hand, Montresor just chugs a glass, but he also correctly describes the vintage and where the grapes were grown. This shocks everyone, especially Fortunato.
Next, Fortunato correctly identifies Bordeaux Cabernet Chateau Margaux, vintage 1837, a bit heavy for a Margaux, and everyone claps again. Montresor takes his turn and correctly identifies a Chateau Petit Village, 1828. Then Fortunato comments on Montresor's technique. The accredited procedure is to take a small mouthful, wish it around the mouth, then inhale, this releasing the aroma. You do it your way, I'll do it mine, says Montresor.
And the camera goes in and out of focus as this battle continues. It ends when Montresor passes out on the table. Later, Fortunato is trying to walk Montresor home. Montresor wants Fortunato to sing with him, but Fortunato declines.
Montresor is drunkenly singing, "Who dat? Who dat knocking on the door? Is that you, Sam?" They finally reach Montresor's home, and Fortunato helps him inside. And Montresor announces his arrival. Here I am, young and handsome. Annabel stands to help him inside, and Montresor introduces his friend, the best friend he ever had, whose name he can't remember right now.
Montresor insists that Fortunato stay, and he sits beside Annabel, and when he sees the cat, he's delighted. Annabel seems delighted that he likes cats. Montresor falls asleep and collapses on the floor, and the two of them hump his inert form up the stairs and heave him onto the bed. They look at each other, sharing a single thought, and then they embrace.
Later, once again, Montresor is at the Red Lion Tavern. He tells the barman what he knows about women. He says he's put Annabel in her place, and now she gives him all the money he wants and lets him stay out as long as he wants. Since when? Asked the bartender. Montresor thinks for a moment. Ever since that day I went to the wine merchants convention and introduced that guy to my wife.
Montresor puts two and two together and comes up with, Annabel is cheating with Fortunato.
Realizing the folly of his ways, Montresor smashes his glass on the bar, throws some coins to the bartender, and storms out. As Montresor approaches his home, he witnesses Fortunato leaving and bidding adieu to Annabel. Montresor goes upstairs to the bedroom and sees that the bed is unmade. Annabel comes in behind him.
She looks as if she's been unmade as well. Annabel says that Montresor startled her, and why is he home? Montresor says because he wants to spend time with his wife, but he can see that she's already in bed. She claims to have had a strenuous day, and he accuses her of exerting herself with her lover.
I don't know what you mean, she says. You lie, says Montresor. You dirty little trollop. So you know, says Annabel. He asks how long this has been going on, and Annabel tells him long enough for her to realize that their marriage is a farce. She announces that she is going to leave him and become Mrs. Fortunato Lucrezi.
Montresor offers insincere congratulations. Now we're with Fortunato, who's in good spirits, knocking on Montresor's door. Montresor answers, and the two share pleasantries. Fortunato thanks Montresor for his dinner invitation. He asks about Mrs. Herringbone, and Montresor says she's busy with dinner preparation.
In the meantime, Montresor offers him some sherry, specifically Amontillado, which he knows is Fortunato's vice. He says he's been saving it for a special occasion. Surely my being here isn't the special occasion, says Fortunato. That's part of it, says Montresor. What's the other part, asks Fortunato. Your death, says Montresor, as Fortunato looks at his glass, then back to Montresor, before falling to the ground unconscious.
He wakes in the cellar, shackled to the wall. He asks what Montresor is doing, besides slathering mortar under bricks for the wall that he's building between the two of them. Montresor tells him to ask his treasure, his heart of hearts. Fortunato doesn't get him. "Ask Annabel," barks Montresor. Fortunato cranes his neck sideways and sees Annabel, also shackled to the wall, but not alive.
Fortunato starts to call for help, and the black cat runs to the cellar. "You're insane," says Fortunato. "That may be, but very clever," says Montresor. Fortunato starts to laugh. "This is a good joke. We'll have many a laugh about it in the future." "I will," says Montresor.
Fortunato chuckles at Montresor's joke for a second. Then he calls out, "For the love of God, Montresor!"
Montresor places the final brick. "Nice professional job," he says, admiring his handiwork.
Montresor cleans up his workspace. He heads upstairs and then ransacks the house looking for coin.
He does eventually find Annabel's stash. "Eureka!" he says. That night at the Red Lion Tavern, drinks are on Montresor, courtesy of his wife, whose money made the evening possible. He mutters that she won't be needing it where she's going, and the bartender gives him a funny look.
And now we're back in Montresor's home, where he's having a strangely filmed dream sequence. The camera goes all wonky. Roger Corman applies a distortion effect on the lens, and we see the cat harassing Montresor, who goes downstairs. He hears banging from the cellar, so he goes to investigate.
In his dream, Fortunato and Annabel burst through the wall of the cellar.
Like the Kool-Aid Man.
Then Fortunato pulls off Montresor's head, and he and Annabel play a game of catch with it as the black cat watches.
As Montresor's headless body tries to catch his own head and put it back on his body.
Montresor wakes up and hallucinates a Komodo dragon on a shelf. He waves that away, then sees a python on a dresser, and he waves that away as well. Then he sees a couple of police officers in the room. He tries to wave them away, but they're really there.
They came in and saw the house in a state, so they searched for him. They received a report from the bartender about him spending money that his wife wouldn't need anymore. Montresor claims that Annabel ran off with her lover, but the police want to look around anyway, and their first stop is the cellar.
So Montresor leads them to the cellar. "Oh, are you coming down, Montresor?" the voice of Annabel calls from the bottom of the stairs. Montresor stops. "Did you hear anything?" he asks the policeman. They didn't, so he continues downstairs.
And now it's Fortunato and Annabel beckoning him forward. Montresor speaks to them, but when the police ask what's going on, he blames it on the booze. The police look around the empty room, finding nothing. Montresor yells at the voices to stop. Montresor asks the police, where could he have hidden his wife and her lover? Under the floor or behind the wall?
He goes to the wall and pounds on it. "Look how solid it is." The sound of a cat moans from behind the wall. "What in the name of God?" says one of the policemen. Montresor spins around. "You can hear it too?"
Indeed they can. They grab a large beam and start battering down the wall. Eventually they're able to punch a hole through the bricks, revealing Fortunato shackled to the wall, Annabel beside him, and the black cat perched on her head.
Annabel is clearly breathing, so maybe she's okay?
That was just a little error on the part of the actor.
Title card comes up, saying, "I had walled the black monster up within the tomb, Edgar Allan Poe." Then the voice of narrator Vincent Price asks us, what exactly is it that occurs at the moment of death, especially to a man who in that moment is not permitted to die, as in the case of Mr. Valdemar.
Said Mr. Valdemar is in the middle of being hypnotized by Mr. Carmichael. Valdemar, of course, is played by Vincent Price, and Carmichael is played by Basil Rathbone. Carmichael commands him to sleep, then waken. Also present are Dr. James and Valdemar's wife, Helene.
Valdemar is awakened, and Dr. James examines him. He checks out okay, and Valdemar declares the merits of mesmerism. Dr. James admits that there seems to be something to it, if used properly and sparingly.
Valdemar wants to toast to mesmerism, but James can't do that. So Valdemar begs him to drink to his beautiful wife. Valdemar says that thanks to this treatment, he will be able to die at peace and not in agony. Carmichael asks Dr. James why he would deny Valdemar that, and he has no answer.
Valdemar says that Mr. Carmichael isn't accepting payment for this treatment, merely a small favor to be paid upon Valdemar's deathbed. Carmichael wants to run an experiment to see if the moment of death can be forestalled through hypnosis. Dr. James thinks this is crazy talk, and Helene is a little upset about it too. But Valdemar thinks it's no biggie. What's the difference if it takes 10 or 20 minutes longer after death? It won't make any difference to him, so why should it to anyone else?
He owes Carmichael a great deal, and could not dream of refusing such an insignificant request. Dr. James relents and says that he must go now. Valdemar commands Helene to walk him to the door. On the way out, James begs Helene to dissuade Valdemar. Helene says that, yes, Carmichael has helped her husband, but like Dr. James, she doesn't trust him.
Dr. James has noticed how Carmichael looks at her. She has too, of course. And Dr. James admits that he's looked at her in that same way. She stops him right there. Despite anyone's feelings, she loves and respects her husband. so she asks Dr. James to respect that too. And so Dr. James bids her farewell. Later, Helene is confronting Valdemar about Carmichael's plan for him. Valdemar nixes all talk on the subject, instead saying that he would like for her to marry Dr. James upon Valdemar's demise.
He knows they have a bond, and that they've been strictly honorable to him despite that, and he loves them both for it. But it would do his heart well to know that she will be cared for after his death. And speaking of death, it's time.
The time has come. Valdemar is in his bed, and Helene and Dr. James are at his side. Valdemar requests that Mr. Carmichael join them, and Dr. James goes to fetch him. "Have a care, sir," implores Dr. James as Carmichael pushes past him. Carmichael assures Valdemar that his death will feel not unlike drifting to sleep. Valdemar asks Dr. James to watch over Helene. Dr. James says he shall, and Valdemar says he can rest well in knowing that. Valdemar looks at Helene and thanks her for having added to his life one great sweet measure of devotion. Then he tells Mr. Carmichael to proceed.
Carmichael is through setting up his gear, which includes a lantern with different color glass panels that he spins. He sends Valdemar to sleep and then asks Valdemar if he can hear him while asleep and has him do a few other tricks.
Carmichael has Valdemar raise and lower his right arm. Carmichael asks if he's in pain. Valdemar says he's in no pain, he's dying. He asks that Carmichael not wake him, to just let him die. Carmichael says he will not wake him and tells Valdemar that he is in a deep sleep from which there is no awakening without Carmichael say so. Then he gives Dr. James permission to examine Valdemar.
Helene steps to the window and Carmichael follows, creeping up on her, asking if she approves of his work and if he personally offends her. She shrugs him off and returns to Valdemar's bedside, where he starts emitting an unearthly sound.
Carmichael starts yelling at him, commanding him to sleep. Helene yells at Carmichael to stop it. When Valdemar is silent, Carmichael starts up again. "Are you asleep now? I had been asleep, but now I am dead." "You are asleep, Valdemar." "No." "Raise your right arm." Nothing happens. Dr. James places a mirror to Valdemar's face. "He is dead," declares Dr. James. "He is dead, but he is aware," says Carmichael. "Where are you?" asks Carmichael. "Darkness," replies Valdemar.
Helene screams and Dr. James demands that Carmichael release him, but Carmichael refuses. Valdemar's mind remains alive, controlled by Carmichael. Dr. James tries to force out Carmichael. Then Valdemar describes his surroundings. Darkness, multitudes of people, and he howls. Helene faints. Carmichael commands Valdemar to be still. He'll let him go when he is finished.
Later, Carmichael is writing at a desk and a servant brings him some whiskey he'd requested. They both look around when the sound of Valdemar echoes through the house. Carmichael dismisses the servant and tells Valdemar to be still. Valdemar continues to moan, so Carmichael goes upstairs to speak with Valdemar directly.
He addresses Valdemar's desiccated body as Valdemar begs for peace, the peace that Carmichael won't grant him. Downstairs, Dr. James and Helene return to the house. Dr. James promises Helene an end to this.
Helene asks how, but Dr. James says nothing and instead leads Helene up the stairs.
Upstairs, Carmichael is about to ask Valdemar for something when Helene and Dr. James knock. Carmichael lets them in. Dr. James says that he's not asking this time, he's commanding Carmichael to end this, and he pulls out a pistol, starting to count to 3. Carmichael says that if you kill me, Valdemar will remain in this state forever. Helene protests this, so Dr. James stops his countdown.
Carmichael says that they need to hear something. Dr. James doesn't want to hear anything from Carmichael, but Carmichael says, "I didn't say it was from me." He takes them over to Valdemar's bed and tells Valdemar to tell them what he just told him. The voice of Valdemar speaks. "I do not wish for you to marry Dr. James. I wish for you to marry Mr. Carmichael." "You heard him," says Carmichael. Helene tells Dr. James he should go. Dr. James protests, but Helene says that was her husband's voice. "But not his will," says Dr. James. "There's nothing to be done," says Helene. "I just want you to go now." "Very well," says Dr. James, "but God help you if you harm her in any way," he says to Carmichael as he exits.
Carmichael tells Helene that she heard Valdemar. Helene doesn't believe her husband really wants that, but she will make a deal with him. If he releases her husband, she will wed him. Carmichael says he need make no bargain with her. He has coveted her these many months, and now he shall have her, body and soul.
Carmichael pulls her towards him, and she struggles and calls for help. Across the room, Valdemar's eyes open, and he starts to rise from the bed. Helene sees this, screams, and faints. Valdemar comes towards Carmichael, and Carmichael also screams.
As Valdemar approaches him, his face starts to melt.
Downstairs, Dr. James is preparing to leave, and the servant has brought his things. He hears the noises from upstairs, so he runs up and breaks down the door.
To his horror, Dr. James sees Carmichael lying under the remains of Valdemar, now a pile of waxy goo. Carmichael is dead. Dr. James carries Helene out of the room.
Then the final title card comes up and reads, "And there was an oozing liquid putrescence, all that remained of Mr. Valdemar." Edgar Allan Poe.
And that's the end. Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we're talking about Tales of Terror from 1962.
In September of 1961, the Los Angeles Times reported that American International Pictures had announced plans to develop a combination of 3 Poe thrillers under the title Tales of Terror. The article said Roger Corman would produce and direct, and Richard Matheson would write a screenplay based on the Edgar Allan Poe stories The Black Cat, The Cask of Amontillado, and The Case of Monsieur Valdemar.
In November of 1961, the LA Times reported that Debra Paget would be a guest star in Tales of Terror. Basil Rathbone, Maggie Pierce, and Leona Gage's casting were all announced in January of 1962. This was Leona Gage's first time appearing in a film. Previously, she was a beauty queen who had to relinquish her Miss USA crown when it was discovered that she was married at the time of the pageant.
Peter Lorre said in a syndicated interview in January of 1962 that he had just finished filming Tales of Terror. Lorre said when he plays a villainous character, he likes to inject some humor into the role. Just because you are a murderer is no reason to be unsympathetic. When I am playing such a role, I try to make people understand the pathological aspects of the character. Besides, it is more terrifying to see a murderer with a sense of humor than a plain, everyday kind of murderer. You might say I'm the only lovable villain on the screen. Nobody hates me for all the bad things I've done.
Vincent Price demonstrated his wine tasting techniques for a photo essay published in newspapers in late June of 1962. In the article, Price said he was tutored in the art of tasting by wine expert Harry H. Wow.
On Monday, November 27, 1961, AIP held an unusual casting call. The studio was looking for the title character of the Black Cat, and the LA Times reported that the sidewalk in the 600 block of North Bronson Avenue turned into a catwalk Monday. More than 100 black cats lined up, as much as cats will line up, for an audition for a movie part in response to a newspaper ad seeking a sagacious black cat. According to the article, each cat had its turn to show off its acting skills. The lineup resulted in minor injuries. One woman needed first aid after a cat waiting in line near her attacked her leg.
In the end, Corman said in Chris Alexander's book, Corman/Poe, that the production ended up using a professional cat for the shoot. A trainer brought their star, along with several backup cats that would take over when the preferred cat stopped cooperating with the trainer, which happened fairly often.
Corman said in another interview that it was Richard Matheson's idea to make the Black Cat segment more of a comedy. Corman said that though he preferred his actors to stick to the scripts during shooting, he allowed Vincent Price and Peter Lorre to ad-lib their way through the drinking sequence. In Chris Alexander's book, Corman says, "I just let them improvise as they got drunker and drunker. Of course, they weren't really drunk. They were acting. But what performances! It's just a wonderful scene, and Vincent and Peter worked very, very well together and had so much fun. And so did I."
Corman repurposed footage he shot for the fall of House of Usher into Tales of Terror, in the scene where the Locke mansion burns to the ground. While shooting Usher, Corman found an old barn that was about to be burned down by its owner. He paid the farmer that owned it a few dollars to allow him and his crew to shoot the barn burning and collapsing, and then he used it in both films.
Corman said they used wax or some other material. Price said it was a composite of glue, glycerin, cornstarch, and makeup to create the melting effect in Valdemar. Corman used lens distortion to enhance the effect of the goo on Price's face, which he says was so hot he could only stand to have it on his face for a few seconds.
Corman told Alexander that originally, Morella was the final tale told in Tales of Terror, but, quote, "We noticed upon screening the picture that something was off. Morella simply did not have the impact we needed for a closing segment, so we kept the comedy to the middle and started with Morella and finished with M. Valdemar, which lent the film a better rhythm and left a bigger impact on the audience. However, Eugene Sudak's novelization of the film restored the original order of the tales."
Joe Hyams of the New York Herald Tribune interviewed art director Daniel Haller about the effects he used in Tales of Terror. Haller listed his tools as stage effects, optical effects, color, makeup, lens distortion, sound effects, miniatures, and certain standards such as ocean waves, fog, and cobwebs. The entire mansion for Morella was designed cleverly in one small room by Haller, who used almost 100 gallons of a new material called web plastic to create cobwebs. The dust and decay were Fuller's earth.
For Montresor's dream sequence in The Black Cat, Haller's quoted as saying, "Actors tossed a life-size plaster head of Mr. Lorre back and forth, and were photographed through an anamorphic lens which, instead of being on a camera in a normal position, was handheld at an angle." Mr. Haller used contrasting color schemes to distinguish between the three segments of the film. Instead of sticking to dark and gloomy colors, he tried when possible to get bright colors because, he said, the picture would play drive-ins which demand a bright print.
Tales of Terror was released in New York City on July 4, 1962, on a double bill with Burn Witch Burn.
AIP's press book suggested theater owners take a cue from American International's cat casting call stunt and hold their own event, calling for local cat owners to bring their kitties to the theater to audition for publicity appearances in local media to promote the Black Cat segment of Tales of Terror. They also recommended holding an amateur hypnotist competition or a wine tasting event sponsored by a local wine merchant or liquor store.
Another idea they had was to hold a horror makeup contest with prizes awarded to the person who showed up at the theater with the, quote, most horrible makeup job.
In July of 1962, syndicated columnist Dorothy Kilgallen reported that Vincent Price had been such a success for American International that he had been signed to do 5 more, quote, spooky assignments, and that they offered him a contract worth $1 million. Taglines for Tales of Terror include a trilogy of shock, suspense, and horror from that master of horror, Edgar Allan Poe.
Vincent Price, master of the macabre, in 3 terrifying characterizations.
A new concept in motion pictures, a new experience in shock, a new experience in suspense.
Variety reported in October of 1963 that Tales of Terror had earned $1 million at the box office in the United States. Dorothy Kilgallen said in her column that the film earned $70,645 the day it opened in New York, which is equivalent to about $760,000 today.
Although Corman, in the Corman/Poe book, said that all the Poe films he did for AIP were successful, Tales of Terror didn't do as well as the others. Corman said that he believed that was because of the trilogy format, which, he later found out via some research, was not favored by audiences who felt they paid for a movie ticket to watch what was essentially 3 half-hour television shows.
Howard Thompson of the New York Times wrote in his review, Tales of Terror is a dull, absurd, and trashy adaptation of 3 Edgar Allan Poe stories, broadly draped around the shoulders of such people as Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Basil Rathbone, who at least bothers to act. Skip it, if possible. However, he did recommend seeing the other film on the double bill, Burn Witch Burn.
Peter B. Good in the Los Angeles Citizen News wrote, the only trouble with Corman's use of unsightly visuals is that the detailed, oozing, decaying human flesh and other such appetizing items are used solely as mere sensationalism. These scenes of putrefaction do not enhance the story, nor do they instill fright and terror into the audience. In fact, nothing about this film even comes near the realm of good suspense and horror. If horror for horror's sake is your cup of tea, then you may be stimulated by the colorful visuals in the film. But if you are one who enjoys good suspense and horror, then you will be disappointed by Roger Corman's Tales of Terror.
Robert Sokolsky in the Buffalo Courier-Express wrote, American International is taking no chances with its latest venture to the realm of that famed writer Poe. This time the studio turned to 3 Poe stories and placed them in a single package, under the title Tales of Terror. That move proved successful, with much of the credit going to Vincent Price, an old hand in the field of horror films. Price has the chance to yank all the stops, appearing in each of the segments.
Margaret Harfer's review in the LA Times was headlined, Horror Bill This Time Is Scary. And she wrote, 3 horror stories from the collection of Edgar Allan Poe comprise Tales of Terror, a goose pimpler calculated to make the blood run cold these warm days. The fright merchants aren't shy about making Poe look like an expert vendor of creepy movie plots. Nobody in the cast bothers about the subtleties of acting style. Overacting seems to be the most direct way of scaring the daylights out of the customers. She also wrote that Poe admirers will almost certainly find Tales of Terror no substitute for the master's original work, but entertaining as another seance with spooks.
Janet Eichel in the Buffalo News wrote, Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Terror transmits the author's characteristic intensity. The picture is not for children. They could hardly understand the repeated upsurges of horror induced by this 19th century storyteller.
The Catholic League of Decency rated Tales of Terror as Class A, morally unobjectionable for adults and adolescents.
The reviewer for the Syracuse Post-Standard praised the Black Cat segment of Tales of Terror, calling it a diabolically clever combination of rare humor and a macabre murder, saying, this is the best of the trio and should be shown as a separate short. In Morella, the reviewer wrote, there's an overlong concern with thick cobwebs and stilted language, and said of the case of M. Valdemar, a horrible visual scene closes this tale. This is preoccupation with death to a nauseating degree. The Black Cat is the lucky one of this trio.
So, Jeff, can you choose a favorite among the 3 Tales of Terror we just witnessed?
Of the 3, I think the strongest is the Black Cat.
Agreed.
And I think that's largely because of the humor in that one compared to the other 2.
It seems to be the longest of the 3 tales. I didn't time them out, but Morella is quite short, and the final tale seems just a little less long than the Black Cat. So I think they spent a little more time on this story as well.
We talked about how they changed the order of the segments when Morella didn't test well at the end. Did they swap the first and beginning? Was Black Cat always in the middle?
Yeah, Black Cat was always in the middle.
That makes the most sense. I think they made the right decision then because Morella is so short. It's just kind of like an introduction to what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm. It would leave me very unsatisfied if that was the end. It's also a real downer. I mean, I guess there were survivors, at least in the other movies.
Yeah, at least there's one Corman Poe movie that ends it with the house burning down that didn't end with the house burning down. Just the story did. But it wasn't the last story. So it was more toward the beginning in this one.
Yeah, fitting. But I agree that The Black Cat is very funny. It's really amusing. Vincent Price and Peter Lorre have so much fun with this. You can tell how much they're enjoying themselves.
And this is the first time they'd worked together. And they would do 2 more movies together for AIP. And Peter Lorre would do 1 more beyond that for AIP before he passed away.
The Beach Party movie?
Muscle Beach Party.
Yeah. I didn't know this was the first time they'd acted together. That's funny. But I guess they're both headliners, so seeing them together must have been a treat.
Well, as I understand it, Peter Lorre was actually brought out of retirement to do this film.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know that he would have been necessarily a headliner. I mean, I guess in the same way that Basil Rathbone would have been, who is obviously way past his prime, but still a name that you could put in a movie that people would recognize.
And be willing to see. Yeah, I read that Basil Rathbone had some trouble with his lines during this, but with a little patience, he got through it all. But I think I like all the tales. Just The Black Cat is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, all 3 of these were good. But I think, again, it's the humor in The Black Cat that just makes it the most enjoyable. Morella, I think, is probably the most gothic of the 3.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Because it's got the old manor and all the cobwebs and
the damsel in distress and the unfeeling male character.
But the story is so simple. I could probably tell it in 3 sentences.
Woman comes home to father after long separation and gets killed by her mother's ghost.
Okay, you did it in 2 or 1 run-on.
Yeah, 1 run-on sentence. But her mother really held a grudge for a long time for something that wasn't Lenora's fault. I don't know why her husband mourned her for so long because she seems like a really nasty person.
Yeah, she comes back and she strangles him right away and he didn't do anything.
No, he tried to keep her alive through mummification.
I mean, I guess he housed her murderer in her eyes.
Yeah, but that's such a selfish outlook. She just seems like a real piece of work. She died because she demanded a party that she wasn't up for, that she didn't have the health for.
Richard Matheson, who is one of my favorite writers, did the screenplay here and adapting the Poe stories. What do you think about him taking the 2 stories, The Black Cat and The Cask of Amontillado, and putting it into 1 story?
I've never read The Black Cat. I've only read The Cask of Amontillado. So I'm not sure how much different it would have been if it had just been about The Black Cat. Have you read that one?
Well, both stories are about 3 or 4 pages long each. So they would never be making a full-length film.
No.
Based on those stories. Even putting them together, they're very similar. In The Black Cat, the man hates the black cat and he tries to stab it and accidentally kills his wife. So he hides her behind a wall and bricks the black cat up with her. And so when people come to investigate, the same thing happens. They hear the howl, open it up, and they find the cat sitting on her head. She's laying there. So it's not as odd to have the cat sitting on her head as it is to have a woman shackled to the wall with a cat on her head.
Then I think that's good that he was able to seamlessly put those together the way he did. I think he's a great writer too, and I think he did a great job with all the scripts in this. They're not terrifying. Like, I wasn't terrorized by any of these, but they're a little creepy. I'll give him that.
I think the makeup in Valdemar is pretty effective. When Valdemar is starting to rot, we don't know how long he's been in this bed, but he looks a little cakey. He actually looks younger than he does at the beginning of the segment when Vincent Price has the old man makeup on.
Yeah, he looks mummified, just like Morella did in the first segment.
But his skin is so smooth in comparison. But then when he did the melting effect, that is really well done. And that must have been terrifying in 1962.
I don't know. The distorted lens that Corman used for a lot of the really horrible parts of this just seemed to kind of take away from that a little bit.
Well, when he starts to melt, they actually do a dissolve. And I think that kind of hurts it. I think a cutaway would have been more effective.
Yeah.
And a lot easier to do.
At least maybe showing off.
We've done quite a few of these. And this is only the second Corman Poe film that we've done. The first was House of Usher. And
we've done quite a few AIP movies, right? What you mean, right?
Well, we've done for the podcast. Quite a few movies we've done for the podcast. And we have done other Edgar Allan Poe stories. We did The Oblong Box, but that wasn't directed by Corman.
No, so of the Corman Poe cycle, this is only our second of the 8 films that they did.
Yeah, this is only the second one that we've looked at so far.
In 2.5 years? That's not good odds. But the rest of them will come up in their time. I wanted to say something about the women in this movie, because obviously Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, Basil Rathbone are the big names. But I thought that in each segment that the women who were paired with them, Maggie Pierce, Joyce Jameson, and Debra Paget, did great too, especially Joyce Jameson as Annabel. She's such a treat to watch in this. She seems to have really great comedic timing, and you're really sympathetic towards her and all she's suffered, and I really enjoyed her in this.
Probably not the only one, because she will return in the Comedy of Terrors.
Oh, good. I get to see her again.
With Vincent Price and Peter Lorre.
Well, I hope we get to that one soon.
Debra Paget, I don't think really had a whole lot to do except look distraught, but I thought she was fine. We remember her from Why Must I Die?
Oh, yes, as the woman who finally confesses just a little too late to the crime that Terry Moore dies for.
And we'll see her again when we get to Journey to the Lost City and the Haunted Palace.
Oh, good. No, I liked her too. And Maggie Pierce, I really felt for her as the neglected woman who's had this terrible life, and she's finally come home for a little validation from her father at the end of it. It's just so tragic. And she doesn't even get, a day with him before she gets killed by her own mother's ghost. It's so, like you said, gothic, but also tragic.
So do you think that putting the comedic black cat in the middle works when you go from this gothic horror story to this comedic little murderous romp to the horror of Valdemar? Do you think it plays all right?
I do. It's sort of like a little palate cleanser after the complete despair of the first segment. And because it's not so terrifying, I think they were right to bring it home with something that actually was in the realm of horror. That's really more Poe-like, something to make your heart pump a little faster. I think that's what it needed.
I can't imagine ending the film with Morella.
Well, what about ending it with the black cat? How do you think that would go?
Yeah, you wouldn't want to do that either. That one definitely belongs in the middle.
What I think was really good is taking these short stories and not expanding them out into a feature film. Because then you have to introduce a whole bunch of characters, a whole bunch of other details that aren't in the story. And that's really hit or miss when people try to backfill a story like that. Here, they're really sticking to the bones of the story. And we don't have to watch a whole bunch of invented stuff to get to that. So I think that was a good decision. Even though Corman later found out the trilogy format wasn't what people were looking for, I don't think that they could have done it any other way. Even the Black Cat, I don't think they could have made a whole movie out of.
Going into the future, an anthology movie isn't that unusual. Amicus has a reputation of doing those. That wasn't all that they did, but their horror anthologies are pretty well regarded today.
Yeah, and movies like the 1980s Twilight Zone movie, Tales from the Dark Side, those all did pretty well. And nobody felt shortchanged by watching that in a theatrical setting.
Yeah, so I think I would disagree with Corman on that one. And the bonus is we get to see these three stories told in film, which probably otherwise wouldn't have. They might be done as shorts, but those aren't always easy to see unless they're in an anthology.
Yeah, unless they become a television show. And then it's not on widescreen. You don't get the impact that you do in a movie. People probably watching it in black and white still in 1962.
Right. Shorts, if they're seen, it's because they're bonus features on a home video release. You don't have an outlet to view shorts for the most part.
They're not going to play them in the theater. So yeah, you're right. And we get to see Vincent Price do 3 different roles. His turn in The Black Cat is so funny. The first time we see him, he demonstrates the wine tasting, and he's such a hoot to watch during this. All the lip and tongue action, it's hysterical. And then he gets to play the drunken father, and he gets to play the hypnotized husband. He gets to do a lot in this, and I think as a showcase for him, it's great.
Well, in The Black Cat, he's also going against Peter Lorre, who's trying to steal all the scenes that they share. So they're kind of in competition there. And I think it shows, and Price is definitely chewing the scenery when he can.
It's a battle between the two of them, not just in the drinking competition or for Annabelle's heart, but for screen dominance.
And even in the case of M. Valdemar, when as Valdemar, he's describing his condition and saying that he's going to die, he goes, "I am physically doomed." So he's having fun, even when he's dying.
Yeah, he probably had the least fun in Morella, but there's really no room for fun there.
No, that character was a lot like his character in House of Usher, where he was humorless and brooding and mourning his dead wife for decades.
Yeah.
And clean-shaven in both films.
Yeah, I was afraid his mustache was going to fall off during the drinking sequence in Black Cat.
We both agreed that The Black Cat was our favorite story of the 3, but Which Vincent Price performance do you think was the strongest of the three?
Oh, I think in The Black Cat. I think that he got to play against his horror persona a lot. And like I said, he had so much fun with the role that it's fun to watch him. It's fun for us as the audience. So I would say that was probably the strongest role, getting him to say the immortal line, "For the love of God, Montresor." Yeah, I think it was that one. What do you think?
I would disagree. I think his strongest performance is going to be in Morella.
Really?
As the mourning alcoholic widower.
Why do you think that?
We don't really get to see Vincent Price play angry. He's a villain a lot, but there's always that twinkle in his eye and that humor.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in that segment and in House of Usher as well, where he's just so quiet and laid back and just not what you expect. And it's just a different performance than what you've come to expect from Vincent Price.
Well, underneath, he's a seething cauldron of anger, but on the surface, he seems very composed.
And I think that shows in his performance, and I think it's a very good performance.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying that The Black Cat is like leaps and bounds above the rest. I just prefer it above the other two. And so now, taking Tales of Terror as a whole, how would you rate it using our scale where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic?
Well, we're going to rate this as a whole, even though there are 3 segments. But I'm going to describe each segment as I do this. The first segment, Morella, the Gothic tale. It's creepy, it's short, it's simple, and it's good. That one's an A. The Black Cat, it's got the humor. It's got Peter Lorre and Vincent Price bouncing off each other. It incorporates the 2 tales of the Black Cat and the Cask of Amontillado and does a really good job of incorporating the elements from both into one story. It fits really well together. Richard Matheson did a great job writing it, and everyone did a great job performing it. That one's an A. The Case of M. Valdemar. This is probably the creepiest of the 3 because you have a corpse coming to life, which we did see in the first segment, but that seemed all supernatural. This is done by science.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems a little creepier because this is a man-made problem. And it is kind of distressing to think that what if you were dead but not allowed to go where dead people are supposed to go because some guy's holding you hostage because he wants to donk your wife. So it gives you something to think about. And that one's also an A. So all in all, Tales of Terror is an A for awesome. What are your thoughts, Cheryl?
I love how you had to average it out to get the final score when they're all A's. I can't disagree with any of that. I really liked the tale of Morella. It sort of hit me in the feels, just the tragic tale of this young girl who had nothing in life, and now at her life's end, she just wants to connect with her father, and there's no time because her mom kills her. She was going to die anyways, but she could have had 2 months with her dad. But instead, no, there's great tragedy happens. Then we segue to the Black Cat with this fun banter between Peter Lorre and Vincent Price, as well as the comedic stylings of Joyce Jameson, and then the ultimate tragedy where she and Fortunato are not allowed to be happy together, so they get bricked up in a tomb and die hanging off a wall. It's a tragic comedy. And then we go to the really creepy Case of M. Valdemar, where Basil Rathbone plays the evil mesmerist who wants to use his power to not only take over the consciousness of a dying man, but also take over his wife. And I sort of had an objection to that when it seemed like there was no choice, but she had to marry him because her husband told her to. Does she not have a say in this? Does she not have free will? She's a widow. She can marry whoever she wants. But anyway, the way it's done is very suspenseful, very creepy. You don't know what's going to happen. And it kind of pulls that rising from the dead thing at the end. And then the putrefaction, it's just so creepy and good. So they're all A's. And of course that, like I said, averages out to an A. This is a lot of fun to watch. It's a really good example of an anthology movie, of taking some short stories and making a little with them, but not making too much. So definitely it's an A for me as well as you.
If you crave more chills and thrills from AIP's vaults, you can haunt our online crypt at AIPpod.com. That's where you can listen to past episodes, find links to all our socials, and even browse posters, lobby cards, and trailers for the films we've covered. You can also send us a message, tell us what you think of the movies, or request a film you'd like for us to tackle in a future episode. Plus, under the Help Us tab, you'll see a list of hard-to-find movies we're still trying to hunt down. And if you'd like to support the show, you can also find a link to our store, where every purchase helps us keep the website alive and the podcast going. That's AIPpod.com.
And now we return to real-life Tales of Terror. For the American International Podcast, I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.